How's it going, everybody? The Mythical Pickle here, and welcome back to another Fallout New Vegas video. Now let's not kid ourselves, we all knew this challenge run was coming as soon as we watched the Fallout TV show. And now that the buzz of it all has died down a bit, I feel like it's the perfect time to reignite your curiosity for the fantastically dark satire world that is Fallout.
Okie dokie.
Speaking of curiosity, let's not beat around the bush a second longer. Yeah, you guessed it, or read it. It's everyone's favorite irradiated personality from the show, the Ghoul. Part philosopher, part comedian, and 100% ghoul. He's got that unique charm that only several hundred years of radioactive decay can bring. So grab your Pip-Boy, strap on your power armor, and let's dive right back into the waste as we aim to answer the question, can you beat Fallout New Vegas as the Ghoul? Now without further ado, let's lay down some ground rules for the challenge run this time around. To start off, we have some standard rules that are likely to be seen in future challenge runs. That is, no companions of any kind aside from quest mandatory ones. I must stay in character with all dialogue choices and fraction decisions. And last, but certainly not least, I must beat the main quest. Now for the more unique rules, I can only wear Cooper Howard's legendary duster and fitting cowboy hat. Also, I can only use the Ghoul's world famous pistol rifle shotgun thing. Yeah, clearly I'm not much of a gun guy. And just like my last challenge run, we will be running a few mods to help the game function a little smoother, as well as match the theme we have set. I made it a point to only pick mods that will in no way make me overpowered or render the challenge useless, but rather make the challenge feel a little more fresh and engaging. Now, with all that out of the way, let's dive right in, shall we? After entering our mythical name, I made sure to choose the Ghoulify option in the character created. Oh, damn. Yeah, it's probably best that we won't get to see his face too often. Well, now that I was looking like a not-so-fresh corpse, I strutted on over to the Perk-O-Matic and got to setting up my special stats. Now, since the Ghoul is pretty much glued to his revolver, I went ahead and drained strength down to 1. Next, I put just a little bit on perception, as we're gonna want a healthy base for VATS, should we need it later on. Then I poured a great deal into endurance and charisma, as the health bonus should prove mighty useful through our ghoulified misadventures. And not to mention, we couldn't be the infamous Ghoul if we weren't at least a bit of a silver-tongued devil. And finally, I took a few points off of agility and then dispersed them into intelligence for leveling and luck, as there's a perk that we'll be needing later that requires it. And with the special points squared away, it was time we shot the breeze with the doc about our skills. This time around, I spec'd into guns, melee weapons, and survival. Now, I know, this skill lineup may seem a little odd at first, but mind you, these skills are required for specific perks, such as the Cowboy. A perk this playthrough just wouldn't be the same without. Now, with these newly discovered skills in mind, I selected the Ghoul starting traits, that being Fast Shot, as I figured our gunslinger would be pretty quick at the draw. Not to mention, I was fairly confident I could make up for the 20% loss on accuracy with my positively superb marksmanship. And let's face it, it wouldn't be a true Fallout New Vegas playthrough without the Wild Wasteland perk. And with all that out of the way, I grabbed my gear from the table and quickly made way to the exit. Now, being that we're finally suited and booted, it was time to see what kind of trouble old Coop could get into in this dusty little town. And just like any standard New Vegas playthrough, I went ahead and talked to Sunny Smiles to try and get a feel for the town. Then she led me on an exhilarating hunt for bloodthirsty sarsaparilla bottles. But apparently I had outlived my usefulness, as she then pawned me off to the local saloon. Though, upon arrival, I found a confrontation taking place between the bartender and then not so friendly patron. But since it was none of my business, I just took a seat and let it play out. And finally, once the convo had concluded, I struck up a conversation with the upset customer to find out what was truly going on here. He was a bit snappy at first, but using the ghoul's good old witty charm, he did let me in on his plans. Turns out, he was looking to take over the town, but was too much of a puss to take out one of the locals that started this whole fiasco in the first place, Ringo. So, being the good ghoul I am, I happily stood up where Mr. Cobb couldn't and did some investigative work on this Ringo fella. Finding him up in the old gas station wasn't too difficult, but even though the conversation went smoothly at first, as it turns out, telling Ringo you were sent to kill him really struck a nerve.
What?
Now with Ringo taken care of, I spoke to Cobb again, and big surprise, he tried to pawn off more dirty work on me. So I agreed, did absolutely nothing he asked of me, and then let him know that the town was ready to go. And without hesitation, we took down each and every last Goodspring inhabitant that had the misfortune of standing up against the awesome power of the ghoul's revolver. And now that the town was secured, I spoke to Cobb one last time, and he let me know that I was welcome in Goodsprings anytime, and that most of the local powder gangers were friends now. So, I lined up the barrel of my revolver and set the record straight. The ghoul will never be on any side but his own. And I know some of y'all may be thinking, why did you just decimate Goodsprings? It's not even required for the main story. But, as a great ghoul once said,
"Thou shalt get sidetracked by bull every goddamn time."
Speaking of BS, it was time to leave this sleepy little town and make my way to Prim, as let's not forget, we were just shot in the head point blank by some fella in a checkered suit. And I allot upon taking that cold sweet revenge as soon as I can. Now as usual, when I arrived at Prim, the place was crawling with a few scavs that clearly had no business being there. So Cooper took it upon himself to do a little pest control. Plus, I could use the target practice. Now that Prim was seemingly safe, I made my way into the casino and spoke with the emergent leader in hopes of finding any info on this checkered suit fella. But before he divulged any information, he asked that I help save Mr. Bugle, the local deputy, from the grasp of the remaining convicts that were holed up in the hotel across the street. And although the ghoul would rather handle business quickly and head on, any issue that can be handled with a smoking barrel might just be something he could get used to. With the hotel wiped clean and the deputy saved, I pulled as much info out of the locals as I could on this checkered suit's whereabouts, and as a surprise to no one, the best they could do was direct me to yet another hotel down the street in a little town by the name of Novak. Now, in most cases, the ghoul would have wiped this place clean for that kind of disappointment, but lucky for them, one of the local merchants sold my special .410 shells. So I decided to play nice. For now. And since this was my sole lead I decided to mosey on over to this motel anyway, and once in Novak, I did the usual bit of talking to one person and being sent to the next, and so on, you get the idea. This went on for a bit, but eventually I spoke to the one guy in town that claimed to have the info I needed, Manny. So I pressed the guy for it, but he wasn't budging. He said before he could help me, he needed a nearby ghoul infestation taken care of. And once again, surrounded by no other options, Cooper accepted Manny's terms, and I made my way to the source of the problem. Now let's not forget, Cooper Howard may have been an average Joe human once upon a time, but a few hundred years will do a lot to a fella. And unfortunately, or fortunately for him, it was mentally and physically. All this to say that I, or rather the ghoul, absolutely annihilated the cult of ghouls that set up shop in this place, as I hadn't the time nor the patience to help send them off to space. An unfortunate means to an end, but honestly, they were absolutely insane. The least I could do was put them out of their misery, right? Well, anyway, when I returned to Manny, he was pleased with my efficiency and divulged his, albeit sparse, information on the checkered suit who goes by the name of Benny. Apparently, Benny had plans of heading to Boulder City to work with the Great Khans. So I made my way to Boulder City lickety-split in hopes of catching the dude, but it seems that an all-out battle was taking place between the NCR and the Great Khans instead. So I snuck through the gates and into the complex without a hitch, but even though I tried to talk to the leader about Benny's whereabouts peacefully, I reckon these Great Khans are a bit ghoul-phobic, as I was lit up as soon as I stepped foot through the doors. Oh well, the old trigger finger was getting restless anyway. Now, because I didn't want to make two major enemies in one go, and partly because they didn't threaten to kill me, I decided to leave the NCR squadron be, and instead I vamoosed. But now, without much to go on, the last-ditch effort to find Benny lied somewhere in the shimmering streets of New Vegas, home of greed, debauchery, and general vice-laced merriment. Some things never change, I guess. Upon arrival at the Strip, I was greeted by none other than Victor, the tin man that pulled me out of the dirt. He told me that Mr. House, the Strip's overseer, wanted my presence at the Lucky 38, but there's no way in hell I'm gonna waste more time talking when the son of a bitch that shot me in the head and stole my platinum chip was just a block away. So I declined Victor's offer for now.
Don't you dawdle, little doggy. Mr. House isn't someone you want to go about snubbing. He'll be waiting.
Was that a threat? Well, anyway, I carried on to the Tops Casino where I was again forced into yet another conversation. This time with security asking old Cooper to hand over his fancy revolver. Now, if there's one thing the ghoul would absolutely never do, that would be willingly handing over his beloved revolver. But unfortunately, the casino's security didn't take too kindly to that answer. Wow, I think I just had some Red Dead Redemption flashbacks. Let's try that again. And now the front desk security was taken care of, it was time to handle Benny and friends. And as soon as I spotted them, they made it clear they weren't looking to waste any time talking. But then again, neither was I. And at long last, I had finally settled the score with the checkered suit man. And after rummaging through Benny's lifeless body, I finally found my hands on the platinum chip. And not knowing what else to do with it, Cooper Howard finally let curiosity get the best of him, and we headed down to the Lucky 38 to see what Mr. House was all about. After speaking to Victor once again, he guided me up to the penthouse floor where we found Todd Howard? Oh, yeah, right. Forgot about that mod. I'll be right back. Alright, now that we're back in the penthouse, I spoke to Mr. House, who initially tried to butter me up with some compliments, but wasted no time getting to the point.
Let's have the chip then.
But as we've seen, the ghoul isn't exactly one to give in to demands willy-nilly. But even when I tried to make some simple conversation with him, it was met with more demands and even less answers. So I looked him square in the screen and hit him with a cold, hard no. And big surprise, Mr. House was not pleased. Oh well, more fun for me then.
You needn't be afraid of me.
Engaging target. Partner unit disabled. Destruction of all officers.
Now that the entire penthouse was rid of its robo-security, I traveled down to the main control room, the one place Mr. House was sure to be hiding. And sure enough, after a few button presses, Mr. House was released from his immortality tube. I, of course, gave him a chance to speak his last words in all his old shriveled glory, to which he used his final breaths to curse my entire bloodline. Then, finally, Cooper settled a score far more important than Benny, one that had been brewing since long before the bombs even dropped. And now that Mr. House was out of the picture, it was time to get the strip under new management. A bit more ghoulified management, if you catch my drift. So, I actually traveled all the way back to the Tops Casino and found Yes Man hanging out in Benny's old suite. Yes Man then promptly spilled the beans on Benny's original plans of taking over New Vegas, which included uploading Yes Man into Mr. House's main network. And since I had already cleared the way, I invited our new friend to the Lucky 38, where I then uploaded him to the main computer. And since Yes Man now had complete control over the strip, that means we do too. A very welcome change of pace for old Cooper. But just before we could start our supreme reign, I gave Yes Man the platinum chip, which in turn upgraded our staff of Securitrons with a full-on missile barrage. Oh yeah, the Mojave is absolutely Well, now that the strip was ours and we've got an entire robot army at the ready, it was high time to start shaping the future of the Mojave any way we see fit. And first up on the chopping block was the Gomorrah, a casino that was a front for a much larger evil crime organization, which, if you ask me, is old news when it comes to Vegas, but I digress. Now, similar to the Tops, the guards immediately made it clear that my firearms weren't allowed on the premises. Now, given that Coop wasn't about to give up his revolver for these cowpoke either, I found myself at a crossroads. Do I wipe the slate clean and obliterate the casino and its evil inhabitants? Or let them roam free in hopes that they'll turn a new leaf? Maybe even start a non-profit or something? Nah, I'm just playing. The Omerta family is straight up super villain level evil, and even an opportunist like the ghoul has its limits. The next faction to deal with, if you can even really call them that, is the White Glove Society, a secretive group of high horse riders that run the Ultra Lux Hotel Casino. Upon entering the place, I was once again bombarded by security asking for my revolver, and again, let's just say things went south real quick. But surprisingly, after clearing out all the guards in the entire front room, I found that the rest of the casino was perfectly okay with my presence, revolver and all. Not sure if that was a glitch, but I ain't complaining. Now, on the surface, these dillweeds don't look like much, but they've got a terrible secret they're holding close to their chests. And after quite a bit of digging and borrowing, we found that dirty little secret. Yep, they're cannibals. Every damn one of them. And my initial response to that was, brother. But then I recalled the words of a very wise ghoul. Sometimes a fella's gotta eat a fella. So Mr. Howard decided to leave them be for now. Besides, they might be a good asset later on down the road. And if not, that's nothing a smoking barrel can't solve. Now that the strip was cleaned up a bit, as much as New Vegas can be, I suppose, that meant it was time to branch out to make sure the rest of the Mojave knew what it was in for. The first of our wasteland pals to visit was none other than the Boomers. But after bobbing and weaving my way through a goddamn war zone, I was immediately chauffeured to the airplane grandma, where she then tried to get the ghoul to do some dirty work on the Boomers' behalf. Now, normally I would have helped them out, but honestly, Cooper can handle himself just fine without the need for air support, not to mention he isn't exactly known for his charity work. So I denied Granny's request and decided to leave the Boomers at peace for now, as they really didn't seem like they'd be causing any problems later on. But the same can't be said for their wastelandic neighbors, the Great Khans. Now, as far as factions go, the Great Khans hardly pose much of a threat at all to us securing the Hoover Dam, but let us not forget that the Great Khans helped Benny greatly in the attempted murder of the ghoul at the very start of the game. And if there's one thing the ghoul would never do, that's let go of a grudge. Nah, in fact, every fiber of his being runs on skewed justice and sweet, unbridled revenge. Well, that and a whole lot of chems. So, after popping a few mentets and a psycho, Mr. Howard took his grand opportunity to lay down the law. With the Great Khans now wiped off the face of the planet, it was time to handle the big dogs in town, the Brotherhood of Steel. But as I was making my way over to the Brotherhood bunker, I was ambushed in a valley by Vipers, a savage, bloodthirsty group of raiders that were apparently trying to turn me into lunch. Now, we just ain't having that. And at this very point, I remembered that I had well surpassed level 4, which granted me the equally savage perk, cannibalism. Now I know what you're thinking, no way this guy is about to start eating peeps, but let me let you in on a little secret. The ghoul's already been doing so for a long time. Strange, I know, but need I remind you of the old saying?
Sometimes a fella's gotta eat a fella.
Well, now that the ghoul's done being a sadistic cretin, we ventured forth into the belly of the beast, the Hidden Valley Bunker. As I stepped through, however, I was again hostilely greeted at the entrance by a group of armed 10 men. They told me that if I wanted to speak to the captain of this ship, I was gonna have to hand over all of my belongings beforehand, and they also mentioned that if I tried to leave, I'd be shot on sight. And at this point, the ghoul ghoul has been no stranger to picking fights with those trying to take from him. But in this case, a few heavily armored guards in a small room might be a bit more than he could handle. Even the ghoul knows when to pick his fights. Plus, he's got a little something special in store for these cowpoke. For now though, I begrudgingly handed over the goods, and we were escorted to the Brotherhood Elder, Namara. After babbling on about the Brotherhood protocol and whatnot, he eventually tasked me with finding an NCR Ranger holed up in one of the bunker's entries. Now, normally the ghoul isn't the type to say how high when asked to jump, but for Coop's little plan to work, we need to keep the Brotherhood on our good side. So, I obliged. But this wasn't without consequence, as Namara then placed a bomb collar around our neck in case the ghoul got any funny ideas, I guess. That's just great. Well, bomb collar and all, I went and found this ranger, and after talking to him for a bit, I was able to convince him through a couple of speech checks to deactivate the collar. But sadly, this not only ended in the Brotherhood hunting us both down, it also got our new friend here reduced into a pile of baking soda. So instead, I got rid of the ranger with a little bit of the western charm the ghoul's so well known for, and reported back to the base with the news. Thankfully, at this point, the collar was removed, and I was free to enter and exit the base as I pleased. Which brings us to the final stage of our plan. First, I went around the base pickpocketing every one of the execs, including Namara, for their control cards. Then, I made a leisurely stroll over to the bunker's master computer, entered the keys, pressed a few buttons, and in a matter of no time, the Brotherhood bunker was set to self-destruct. And obviously this upset a few of the locals, but for some reason, rather than evacuating and escaping with their lives, they all decided that trying to end me was more important. Unfortunate for them though, our revolver was getting restless in its holster. Now, I couldn't waste much more time without risk of going down with the ship, so to speak, so I hightailed it to the Elder's office and had a few choice words with Mr. Namara. But let's just say the ghoul let his revolver do most of the talking. And with that debt collected, I saddled up and ran for the hills. And by the minor earthquake and thick smoke rising from the vents, I knew our work here was done. But just as I was about to return to Yes Man with the good news, our friend here didn't quite get the memo. How's the saying go? No man left behind? Yeah, that'll do. Now that every major faction, excluding Caesar's Legion, was put in check, it was time to finalize preparation for the Battle of Hoover Dam, which meant placing some doohickey in another doohickey that'll eventually give us control over the Hoover Dam's main network somehow. So, without too many questions, I made my way to the El Dorado substation, lickety-split, and gave the NCR troops their slightly impromptu wake-up call. With the chip installed, I reported back to our buddy Yes Man, who then insisted I go help protect President Kimball from his impending doom. But since my standing with the NCR was what you'd call irreparably damaged by our previous dealings, that quest was brushed off, leaving us with just one last objective. And after all the blood, sweat, and crocodile tears, it was finally time for the battle for Hoover Dam. Now, it should be noted that just before this, I had farmed the Gunrunner bot for as much .410 shells as I could manage, so the ghoul should be more than well prepared for the battle ahead. Speaking of battle, as soon as we arrived at the Hoover Dam, things were already getting hairy. So, without a second thought, the ghoul popped a few chems and started laying out legionaries like it was going out of style. With half the dam rid of Caesar's Legion, I traveled deep down where I found a couple NCR brats posted up in the front of the main control room. And since we needed into that very room, the ghoul did what he does best. Now that we were inside, I activated Yes Man and turned on the central power. And in no time, the ghoul and his massive revolver were once again dishing out some high-octane violence to any unlucky legionary that stepped before him. After quite the battle, I wandered into the Legion camp, only to find a particularly self-righteous son of a bitch heading right for me. After a quite brief exchange of talking, the ghoul squared off against his most difficult foe yet. But even the best the Legion had could never match the deadly aim of the one they call the ghoul. And with the final battle now behind us, I talked to our good friend Oliver at the front gates. After telling the dude to kick rocks, he was less than happy with the deal. But just like those that came before, and the many that are sure to follow, he soon understood that no just ain't a word the ghoul understands. Shit, I think my game just crashed. Okay then, let's run it back. Son of a b****. And after some evasive maneuvers, I was finally able to let the general meet my army of Securitrons without my computer self-destructing. And after a brief exchange with our boy Yes Man, the No Gods, No Masters quest was finally complete, proving once and for all that yes, you can indeed beat Fallout New Vegas as the ghoul. Hey Pickle Knights, hope you enjoyed that one. It certainly took a bit longer than I intended. I think a lot of that came down to planning and coordination of how Cooper Howard would handle the unforgiving lands of the Mojave. Lots to do and handle, but all in all, I had a lot of fun making this video, and I'm seriously excited to bring y'all more content, hopefully more regularly. I do still hope to make a video on Starfield. I know I'm pretty late to the party on that one, but look at us here, enjoying a 10-year-old game. Maybe a little time from release was exactly what Starfield needed, or maybe not. Well, I guess we'll find out. Anyways, I hope y'all stay safe, eat well, and oh yeah, before I forget, I hope you have an amazing rest of your day, and as always, remember to smile.
Got me working up an appetite.